Alright, what is happening, people? It is Brian Alsruhe with NEVERsate.com, and I'm going to try something different for this video. So, every single day before I start my work day, I take the dogs for about an hour walk, and that just kind of calms them down enough that they can actually handle class and the excitement of people jumping around. But while I'm doing that hour, typically I'm doing some sort of listening to podcasts or some sort of productive input. But every once in a while, I figured I could walk around and maybe turn the camera on myself and talk to you guys about a question that maybe has come up a lot. So in the last video, I asked for overhead press Q&A questions, and thank you guys so much. Please continue to leave them down below. You guys are leaving some awesome ones, so it's really, really good. However, by far the most asked question has been about feeling woozy or feeling like you're gonna pass out during the overhead press. So I thought maybe I could dedicate an entire video just to that idea and explain to you guys a little bit of my experience with it, why it could be happening to you, and how you might be able to resolve it. So firstly, a lot of the reasons why you might be feeling like you're gonna pass out could be possibly because some of the things that I addressed in the last video, talking about a weak front squat, a weak barbell row, and a weak weighted pull-up. All of those are gonna help build a better platform for your overhead pressing, as well as build up your posterior chain, which is the posterior chain is the main reason why you're probably feeling woozy. Now this happens in two main areas. The first is when you are in a true front rack position where the bar is up against your throat and your hands, the bar is not really in your hands, more traditionally like you would in a front squat, or a jerk or a push jerk or anything where you're trying to move a whole bunch of weight overhead. The other one would be when you're kind of in a push press position where the bar is still in your hands. It's not like a true front rack, but you're just kind of holding all the weight there. In both cases, what I've found has helped me tremendously is flexing my butt. Once I walk that bar out, the first thing that I do is flex my butt, because if I don't, I go sleepy time, which will lead me to a story in a second. But when I first started experiencing this, I started asking questions and did some research, and honestly, there's not a whole lot out there, but I did run into some helpful people who did enough research for me that they found out that supposedly what is happening is when your body is breaking down, when you go from a good front rack position and it starts breaking you down, whether it be in your upper back or whether it be in your hands, and you start slouching forward, when that starts happening, number one, your body is going into almost an emergency sympathetic response where it is kind of going into fight or flight, because it does not like the sensation of having all this being crushed. That's why a lot of people, when they get in the front rack position on the log, almost immediately feel like they're going to pass out or have a panic attack. It's just a lot of weight, and it's very oppressive. Now the second reason, and again, this is what was told to me, is that when you break down like that, it actually starts cutting off your carotid artery, very similar to the way that a blood choke does in any type of jiu-jitsu. If you guys have trained any sort of grappling where they do a blood choke, where it's not air, if you guys get your air supply cut off when you're being choked, you can survive a long time. However, if you get your blood choked off, you are asleep in seconds and you are dead not a whole lot longer after that. Now, typically the way that you can know the difference is that when you're getting blood choked, it feels like your eyes are going to pop out of your head. And if you felt that on front squat, most likely you're in a really good position. Congratulations. And if any of you have had the great displeasure of being underneath a very heavy front squat, where the world kind of starts closing in on you, typically it changes color. Some people it's yellow, some people it's purple. You get visual and auditory exclusion. You kind of just start seeing tunnel vision. All of the music sounds like it's underwater. And then next thing you know, you wake up with your friends pointing and laughing at you. These things happen. At my gym, they happen a lot. Because you're talking about incredible forces that your body needs to build tolerance up for. So that's exactly why, if you are a heavy squatter, say you squat 800 pounds, right? And you have not been under an 800-pound squat for 6 months, when you get under 500 pounds, it's gonna feel like a truck. Your body needs a certain amount of tolerance, and this is something that people who lift heavy things completely understand. So it's no difference with this. You can absolutely build this tolerance. Some people feel it on a Zercher squat, some people feel it on the front squat. It really depends on where you're breaking down. Now, the best ways that I've found to combat this are, number one, to flex your butt, because that links up your entire posterior chain. And if we're talking about the analogy of your body being a stick, your butt is kind of the weak point, right? That is the middle, that is the easiest to break. So when you flex that and you engage your glutes and your posterior chain can kind of link up, you have a much better chance of doing okay there. Secondly, you need to think about your chest position. Your chest always needs to stay up and proud, but I also think you should keep your chin kind of neutral or even pointed down. The reason why is because when you're in a front rack position, if you drop your elbows, or I'm sorry, if you push your chin up like you're looking up at the sky, it actually drops your front delts down, and then you're going to be fighting that bar staying on your shoulders anyway, which is going to compromise posterior chain. It's changing everything. So There are a couple things that need to be worked here that I've discussed at length in my tutorial videos, but number one is your breathing and bracing. You need to make your body, just like this can, as stable as possible. Seal this thing up with that air. Do not be screaming during your sets. That is for movies, not for moving heavy things. You seal this thing. When this thing's sealed, it's very, very hard to collapse. That's what you want to do when you get air in your belly. Your entire torso is just like this can. This arm's getting really tired. We're gonna need switch arms. This is too much. Oh, it's okay. Take it easy. That arm was tired. Now we're almost to that funny story, but first I want to address the people who talked about where they feel like they're going to pass out near the lockout or the top of the lift. And for those people, I'd probably say something that I just mentioned is probably what's going wrong and you're just seeing the end of it. Kind of like if you're shooting an arrow at a target, when you're very up close, your mistakes don't show up very much. You can still hit the bullseye, but the further back that you go, the more and more those mistakes show up. So maybe you're doing things better than some people, but when you're driving that bar, maybe it's getting out in front. Most likely what is happening is that bar is out in front. You're basically going up on your toes to try to catch it and get the bar back over the middle of your foot. However, that is a very, very tough thing to do with a heavy weight when your body's completely stretched out like that. On top of the fact that you're probably looking up and craning your neck, arching your back very, very much in a terrible position. So your body's probably sending off all kinds of terrible signals. And you've been holding your breath probably for a legitimate amount of time. So you put all those things together, that's probably why you're feeling a little bit like that. But more likely than anything is probably because you were leaning back to try to finish that press instead of trying to punch your head forward through the window in order to get the horsepower back into the bar. Yeah, so most likely if you can work those things and kind of build up some of your weak points in your upper back and posterior chain, then you will stop feeling like you're gonna pass out. But now it is time for the story. Switching arms again. Video brought to you by Rebel, these little brats. So many moons ago, back in 2014, my front squat, and I know this for a fact, was 425 for a single. And the reason why I know this is because at my first strongman competition, I was told that front squats are what you need to be doing if you want to be good at strongman. So I was really trying to drive up that number. And I went to a fellow competitor named Dan Caraway, who is, if you are involved in East Coast or West Virginia strongman, you'll know that name. He's the nicest guy ever. But I went up to him and asked him what his front squat was. I think he was like, I don't think he gave me a number, but I was like, mine's at like 425 for a single. And he goes, oh, no, mine's much higher than that. So after I felt really horrible about myself, thank you, Dan, I decided that it was time to drive up my front squat numbers. And I'm actually really glad that I did because it has done a ton to really push up all my other numbers. However, the front squat, if you guys have had a lot of experience with it, that is a tough lift to really build up. And what I found is up to about 400 pounds, I was okay. When I got to around like 425, 455 especially, my head would get really, really weird and woozy. I'd walk the bar out, I would feel like I was gonna pass out. Sometimes I'd go for it. Most time, by the time I got to the bottom, I would almost be asleep, so I would drop the bar and then that would be the end of the rep. This happened a lot. Now I was pushing hard. Come on, plane. A jerk. Flying my video. Punch you in your face. So I was pushing hard for a 500-pound front squat because still to this day, I do believe that a 500-pound front squat is a feat of strength that so few people will ever reach. It just, if you can do a 500-pound front squat, you are a strong individual in my mind. So this was something that I really, really wanted to do. However, I had missed it, and I'm not kidding here, probably like 7 or 8 times. I think my PR was around like 485, but I refused to stick all 5 plates on without that little 2.5 and hit it. I needed that 2.5. If you guys, I'm sure you guys can all relate. But at this time, my gym was less than a year old. And as you guys know, I don't have any friends. And we really had like 3 members, right? So when I worked out all alone all of the time. And I was trying to get my YouTube stuff going. So I would record myself working out and things. That led to me going for a 500-pound front squat all alone in a gym with nothing but a little tiny camera posted on some jump blocks. So me being me, I stomp up to the bar, I get under there, I walk it out, and I do not flex my butt. And all that you see is it looks like I'm having a seizure. Like my legs are trembling. I am all over the place. Now inside my head, what was going on is I was looking at one of our members' boxes. We have members' PR boxes. And I was trying to read the letters and I could not read a 3-letter name. It looked a lot like this, sorry. So I take my breath, I brace it down, and then I realize that I am in a lot of trouble. So I literally just turn away from the bar and I think, you're going sleepy time? I've been knocked out many times in my life. I know what it feels like when you are not in a good spot, and I was not in a good spot. So my brain was just thinking, get away from the weights, and then get on the floor, because you're gonna go out, don't hit your head on anything, just get to the floor. So in this video, you see me trembling, you see me turn, and you see me dive. When I dive, I go out of frame. Now, it's like a home plate baseball slide. I dive to the ground. That's the last thing I remember, is thinking, get to the ground. In the video, time passes. I'd say probably about a minute, minute and a half, and then you see this. And that, of course, is because I crawled over the camera and hit stop. Now, out of all the videos I've ever had, I am most proud of that one. And I had it sitting on that camera literally for years because I was too embarrassed at the time to post it on YouTube. You guys know now that would be up in a second. But at the time, I thought it would look poorly on me, so it just sat on that camera forever. And I just was going through deleting things one day and accidentally went through, and now it's gone. Oh, just dumped Red Bull on my camera. And thus is the legend of the missed 500-pound front squat. Anyway, after that, I really started developing it, and now even when I get under something like 570 on the front squat, I definitely have those same exact feelings. I'm gonna pass out. But as long as I breathe and I brace it down hard, just like this can, and then I have my butt flexed, it really does calm down a lot of the problems. Remember, high chest, keep your chin neutral, keep your elbows up, do what you can, but people, please, just be careful when you are doing an overhead press of any kind. The risk of you going to sleep is real. Like, some of my favorite videos on the internet are watching people pass out after heavy lifts. Unfortunately, I do not like watching them fall down, like hit their head on dumbbells. So if you are gonna pass out, do it responsibly like Uncle Nick and myself, and try to just hit your head on some rubberized floor instead of something metal and shiny. But of course, people, all these tips are to help that to never ever happen. Please train safely, because guys, it's no joke. One stupid thing in the gym and you could never be the same again. So always stay focused, always have an intention, never let that up. It is the most important thing ever if you want to continue this game a long time, because that is the difference between staying safe for a really, really long time and not. Just that focus on every single rep. Every single rep is important anyway, because you're either ingraining good reps or you're ingraining bad reps, but it's also important because one bad rep could change literally your spine, your brain, your whatever for the rest of your life. So be very, very careful, train as hard as possible, but as safely as possible. Use these things so you don't pass out during the overhead press. And I really, really hope this video turns out. Otherwise, I just talked a long time for nothing. But I will catch you guys later in the week. Until I do, go after something amazing in my lives. Keep working hard, people. Be nice to each other. I need to go find these dogs.